Today I'm going to take on making a stir fry with pan-fried noodles, and I'll show you how that goes. It's kind of a fun dish. I really like it. It's very flavorful again. This one is not in the Instant Pot. This is actually done on the stove. So let's take a look and go through it and show you how it comes together. All right, I've gathered up all my ingredients here. I think I have everything I need as far as what's going to go in it. I think I'm good there, and I'm going to use my pan-fried noodles to make it. So that'll get me going there. So the first thing we need to do is start creating a sauce. Now, I'm not going to lie, this recipe is time consuming. It's not hard, it's actually fairly straightforward, but it takes some time to pull together. The first thing we need to do is build a sauce, and the sauce is going to have two main ingredients, vegetable stock and soy sauce. Now, I'll put the amounts and everything you need to know about the sauce down in the description, but start with those two ingredients. Now, I like to add a little bit more complexity to my dish, so I add a little bit of mushroom soy sauce and a little bit of dark soy sauce. You don't need to add either one of these to your recipe, but they do add a little complexity to the dish and give it a little more flavor. Next up, I need a little sweetness in there to offset some of the other flavors, and it gives it a little more depth, so I use honey. Honey actually adds a little something to it that gives it just a little bit more punch. You could add sugar, of course, but I think honey's a better choice. We do need a little oil, so I'm going to use a little bit of sesame oil to kind of round it out and give it a little flavor. It gives it that Asian sort of feeling with the sesame sauce. And then I'm going to add some rice wine vinegar. The rice wine vinegar gives it a little acidity, and that kind of balances out all the other flavors. So it's important to use the saltiness, the sweetness, and the vinegar to kind of make it work. And then finally, we're going to use a little cornstarch just to help it to thicken as we're cooking it, so that way it becomes a thicker sauce and it's not just a liquid we put on top. Two other ingredients we need are some garlic, so I use this minced garlic, and some ginger. The ginger I find really makes it come alive, so you've got something that's more deep and got some sort of tanginess to it in your mouth. It really does add something. So you're going to grate up some ginger and put it in the dish. First things first, I'm going to start by boiling my noodles. Now, I like to take my noodles and make them sort of al dente. That means that they're going to have a little texture to them. So they'll boil for about 2 to 3 minutes. And that's plenty of time to get them all the texture I need and cook them fully through. That way they'll have a little softness inside and a little crispiness on the outside when I pan fry them. I give them a couple of stirs as they're cooking, and then when they're ready, I just pour them off just as I would any other pasta. I'm just going to strain them in a pot. And that's it. Next, I'm going to start getting my veggies ready. The first veggie I like to use is an onion. I like Vidalia in this recipe, but you could use really any onion that you like to give it a little flavor. If you like a little more tang to it, you might use a red onion. If you like a little bit more bitterness, you might use a yellow onion. Whatever you like, I think it works. And then we're going to move on to mushrooms. Here I'm using these mushrooms. I think they're called star mushrooms, or they're some kind of wild mushroom. They're typically used in Asian dishes. I really like them for this. They have a certain texture to them that works really well. They hold up well. They have a lot of flavor. So I'll use them for this particular dish. Next, I like to use some snap peas. And the snap peas, I actually just rough chop. I've got about a pound of them here. I'm just going to go ahead and chop them up and use them for this dish. I don't want to do too much to them. I just want them to be about bite size. The great part about this dish is that you can make it your own. You can add whatever vegetables you like in any order you want to give it some complexity and some flavor. Now, I happen to like the snap peas and I happen to like broccoli, so those are the two main vegetables that I use in it. The broccoli I just chop up again into bite-sized pieces. I think it's important to keep them about the right size, but I think they're really nice in this dish. And then finally, the last ingredient that I'm going to prep is actually some bamboo shoots. I buy some at the Asian market that are hunks like this, and then I'll just go ahead and chop them up into smaller pieces that I can put into my recipe. And that's it. That's all the things that I put in here. Now, I do grab some water chestnuts, and I do have some tofu that I prepared previously, and I'll talk about those in just a minute. But we'll go ahead and get started with the main recipe. I do not own a wok. So I use a cast iron skillet, which just means that I have to work in smaller batches, but I think works just as well. Now, if you have a wok, you can certainly use that. It'll speed up this process a little bit. Now, I also cook outside, and the reason I do this is because when I'm cooking with the oils and making all these different things, I find that it leaves a lot of smell in the house, and I prefer to cook it outside, and because of the smoke and the smell, it's just easier outside. But use your own judgment however you prefer to do it. As I build my dish, I like to actually layer it up and make it look really pretty on the end dish that I'm making. As I'll show you as I'm building it, you'll kind of see how it comes together. So I do it in layers and steps to make sure that I can actually build it the way I want. So I start off by making my pan-fried noodles. Now I'm going to use a little almond oil as my base oil in this. You could pretty much use any oil you want that's got a high smoke point. So any one of the vegetable oils will work. So I'm just going to take some noodles and put them in the pan. I want to do this in about 3 parts. With that whole bag of noodles, it's going to do about 3 times in the pan where I have to actually put the noodles in. So I put about 1/3 of them in here and I spread them around to make sure that they cover the bottom so they're going to get that crispiness. I'm on a nice high heat here and they're going to crisp up kind of nicely for me. Now for me, I like to make sure that they're cooked well but not burnt. You could cook them more and burn them just a little bit and give them that extra crispiness. I like to just take them to that point where they start to turn and get a little bit of crispiness, but not where they're actually kind of burnt. It's a very fine line, and if you go just a little too long, they tend to get that little bit of burnt flavor on them. Now, some people like that, not me personally. So as they start to cook, I'll flip them. You can see they've got a little bit of brown spots on them, so you can tell that they're crispy a little bit. You can't really see it, though, that they're really kind of crispy and nice. So it's kind of that fine line, and I like to stay on this side of it, just where they're crispy enough and they taste really good, and they get that sort of thing, but they don't have so much char on them. And then once they're done, I'll just check them, and once they're done, I'll scoop them off and put them onto my plate to actually start building my base of my dish. So I'll just let them cook for another moment here, and then I'll give them just a little bit more. Sometimes I'll turn them in pieces a little bit. I know it's a little odd. Some people like to build a nest. Me, I just like the right texture. After I've done all 3, I lay them out on my plate and they look like this. Next, I'm going to add my tofu. Now this is tofu that I baked previously and I'm putting on here. You could certainly pan fry your tofu as well, but I like the baked tofu because it gives a lot of crispiness. So I'll just go ahead and chop that up and put it on top of my dish as the next layer. Then after that, I'm going to come back, put a little more oil, and I'm going to do my mushrooms and onions. I think the mushrooms and onions do well in here, and I want to make sure that they get a little bit of flavor. So I'll go ahead and make my mushrooms and onions in the pan here. I want to go ahead and use some of my sauce that I've made and put it in here as they're cooking because it just adds a little bit more texture to the dish and gives it a little bit of flavor. Each layer is going to have its own version of the sauce put on it, so as it's cooking, it has a little bit of flavor already, so when I finish the sauce at the end, it actually has a nice glaze, but there's already the flavor mixed into a lot of the different layers. So I'll go ahead and mix these up until they're and cook them up until they're completely cooked and they have a nice brownness to them. I just want them to be done. I don't want them to be so cooked that they're soft and mushy, but I want them to have a nice flavor because they're going to add something to the dish. And as I take them off and I put them on top of my 2 layers that I've already put down, I already have my noodles, I already have my tofu, and now here's my mushrooms and onions on top of that. So it's starting to look really nice. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, again, put some oil in the pan and then put some of my snap peas in there. And the snap peas, again, I just want to mix them around a little bit. I just want to get them cooked. If you have some bigger pieces in there that maybe you didn't chop quite right, you can certainly just kind of hit them with the end of your spatula and chop them up a little bit. You can use bigger pieces. I like to just kind of go with it as it's cooking to make sure that the pieces are a good size. So we'll cook those up a little bit, then we'll add a little bit of sauce to these as well. And as they cook, they'll absorb a little bit of the sauce, and that'll make it really nice. And then I'll just cook these for about a minute or so, and then once they're done, I'll take them off and put them on top of my dish as well. I like the green color they bring. It just adds a brightness to the dish that I think is really nice. Okay, a little more oil in here, and it's time to move on to my next ingredient. My next ingredient that I like to do are my bamboo shoots that I've got here. And then also, I'm going to add in some water chestnuts. Now, the water chestnuts come canned and sliced. They're really easy to work with. All I have to do is just dump the can in here, and then I can start working with the whole thing. I do these at the same time because they take about the same amount of time to cook. Again, I'll put a little bit of the sauce on them just to give them a little flavor, and then I'll start cooking them through. Once they're nice and brown and toasty and look really nice, I'll take them off and put them on top of my snap peas. And now I'm starting to get a dish that really comes together. The final ingredient I've got is my broccoli, and I'm going to go ahead and put my broccoli in the pan again with a little bit of oil and a little bit of the sauce, and they'll be ready to go. I'll just go ahead and again saute these for a couple of minutes just to get a little bit of color out of them, soften them just a little bit and make them really nice. Once they're ready, I put them on top of my dish again, and here's what my dish looks like. It's this beautiful layered dish that's got all these different flavors in it. Finally, I take whatever's left of my sauce and I'm going to deglaze my pan and thicken my sauce at the same time. I'll just go ahead and put it in the pan and just let it cook on that same high heat for just a minute or so. You can see it's already starting to thicken a little bit around the edges. And as soon as I see that it's thick and kind of luscious and got this sort of texture to it, and the smell is amazing by the way, I'll go ahead and pour it on top. You can see it all the way across the dish here. And there you go. This is really nice. It looks beautiful. It tastes great. It's a vegetarian pan-fried noodles that I hope you will enjoy.